Mr. Hunt, your mission, if you choose to accept. Welcome back, everybody. Matt the Man here. Hope you're doing well. So we got a new Mission Impossible movie out. Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. But is it truly the final Mission Impossible? I'll get to that, not in this podcast, but in another one down the road. Anyway, we got the new one. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning is finally here. No pun intended. This movie was supposed to come out last year in 2024. It got delayed because of the writers and actors strike. It was supposed to come out a year after Dead Reckoning Part 1. If you remember, Dead Reckoning Part 1 had the Part 1, and this was the movie Dead Reckoning Part 2. But they ended up changing that partly because of the box office of Dead Reckoning Part 1 did not make the money that they expected, and they thought, maybe because we put Part 1 on there, let's not do that with number 2. Take the Part 2 off and just give it the Final Reckoning. And we'll see at the end of the weekend if that makes a difference. But also, you gotta remember, people, when Dead Reckoning came out, it came out a week before the major boom. And I'm not talking about, you know what, I am. I'm talking about the boom, the nuclear bomb. Because in the movie, Oppenheimer was making a nuclear bomb. You see what I did there? Barbenheimer. Barbie and Oppenheimer came out the week after Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. And of course, no one thought the Barbenheimer effect was going to be so boom, explosive. But it was. Oppenheimer almost made $1 million. A 3-hour R-rated movie. And that really shut down Mission Impossible. There was no IMAX screenings after that first weekend. People were going on the Barbie and Oppenheimer craze. And, well, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning was kind of dead in the water. Not because it wasn't a good movie, it just got pummeled by the Barbenheimer. So then the writers and actors strike, pushed the release date for this new one out. And as people know, I'm a huge fan of the Mission Impossible franchise. Even though I did see the original back when it came out in 1996, 29 years ago. It will be 30 years next year. And I still remember it was around Christmas time. We were putting up the Christmas tree in 1996 or 97. You see, back then, movies, even when they were in theaters, they would take forever to come out on video. So it was probably more like 97 than 96. It came out in 96. But maybe it was the Christmas of 96. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, we were putting up the Christmas tree, and my brother or my father, one of them, was watching the first Mission Impossible. And then I remember seeing Mission Impossible 2. I remember I was having surgery, of course, and I had the VHS, and I was watching it when I was recovering in the hospital. And actually, Mission Impossible 3 was the first Mission Impossible movie I saw in the theater in 2006. So next year, that movie will be 20 years old. So we'll have the 30th anniversary of Mission Impossible 1 and the 20th anniversary of Mission Impossible 3 next year. And then of course I saw the fourth one. The fourth one came out. I went and saw it in IMAX because of one reason and one reason only. They were showing the prologue of The Dark Knight Rises. This was in December of 2011. So right before 2012, when The Dark Knight Rises was coming out. And they had the prologue. And of course, being a Batman fan, I'm like, I get to see the opening of The Dark Knight Rises 8 months early. Okay. And then, of course, we had Rogue Nation, which is going to be hitting its 10th anniversary this summer. And then Fallout, and then, of course, Dead Reckoning. So, like I said, I'm a huge fan of the Mission Impossible franchise. I was looking forward to this movie. But I also thought the last one, Dead Reckoning, was not on par with Rogue Nation or Fallout. So I said, well, maybe they stuck the landing with Final Reckoning. Well, let's get into it. Positives. Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt. The guy is 62 years old, and he is doing stuff that no human being should be doing ever. Hanging off of a plane. Not just hanging off of a fucking plane, but moving around the fucking plane on the wheel, on the wings, in the cockpit, out of the cockpit, on the tail, on the front, with no harness, no nothing. Nothing. He's not strapped to anything. It's not CGI'd out. It's not green screened out. There's nothing holding Tom Cruise on that helicopter or on that plane except his fucking hands. It is unfucking believable what this guy. That's why I want to see Tom Cruise, the Tom Cruise from Collateral, and John Wick. I want to see the Tom Cruise from Collateral and Keanu Reeves as John Wick go head to head. Can we have that be in John Wick 5? Can we get that in John Wick 5? Tom Cruise versus Keanu Reeves. Please, for the love of God. But this guy is unbelievable. He's a great actor. He brings a lot of emotion and range in this role once again. And once again, the stunts that he is able to do with no stunt double is unbelievable. And it once again shows he is the best. He is still Hollywood royalty. He is still one of the best out there. And he proves it once again with this movie. Haley Atwell, like I said in the last movie, Dead Reckoning Part 1. Haley Atwell was a nice addition to the franchise. A new character named Grace. And here it's no different. Even though I wish they had more of her in this movie. Her scene with Tom Cruise, they have very good chemistry. I didn't realize till long after Dead Reckoning that they actually did hook up and were in a relationship for a brief period of time. Hey, if you're in a relationship with Haley Atwell for even a brief period of time, good on you. Good on you. I mean, Steve Rogers, decided to just fly his plane into the ocean in the Arctic and be frozen for 50 years or whatever. I mean, dude, you should have turned that plane around and gone back to Peggy Carter. I don't know what you're thinking. But, I mean, and like I said, Haley Atwell, it was nice to see her in this role. She's very more fun, charming, but also serious. Even though I did think, and give them a little bit of a negative, that where we saw her character at the end of the last movie, and where we see her at when we see her in this, she seems a lot more confident and everything. And that if this was supposed to be right after the last movie, where was that little bit of an arc from timid, scared to, like a more confident, ready to fight, ready to, get in there. But overall, seeing Haley Atwell, I really hope they do continue with her character at least moving forward. We'll see. When it comes to the action, there's not as much action in this movie as you would think for a 3-hour movie. But the submarine scene, from the time the submarine scene begins to the time it ends, it is the most badass, it is the most suspenseful, nerve-wracking, edge of your seat, holding the armchairs, squeezing them, sweating, that you're ever going to have, probably this summer, and I would say even in a while in a movie. This is one of the submarine scene in this movie is one of the most intense sequences probably up there as one of the best in the Mission Impossible franchise, because it is the most, oh my god. I mean, it is unbelievable. And it's definitely the highlight of the film. Even if you walk away from this movie not enjoying it, or didn't feel like it lived up to being the final movie, the submarine scene is truly up there as one of the best sequences in this entire franchise. I'm not saying it's the best overall, but it is high up there. And then, like I said, the plane sequence that's in the third act, which we've seen behind the scenes of, we've seen in the trailers a little bit, but there's a lot more in the movie than what we see in the trailers. And like I said, I don't know how any studio, I don't know how any insurance company, I don't know how the director or anyone allowed Tom Cruise to be on that plane and move around like he's moving around with no harness, with no any type of rope, any line or anything hooked up to him. Just, hey, we're gonna be flying this plane through these mountains and areas, and you just have to hang on. And also you're gonna be moving around while this plane is on full speed, turning, moving like crazy. Think like Top Gun Maverick when they're flying through the little, valleyways or whatever. But this is of course a smaller plane, that's a jet. But he's not in a fucking cockpit he's on his own. Nothing. This guy is 62 years old. What are you doing? I mean, yes, we see him hang off the side of a plane in Ghost Protocol, the opening, but this is on another level. This is on another. I mean, people think Tom Cruise is crazy, and he probably is, but sometimes you have that type of guy he's that crazy. I like. It's almost 3 hours long, and I will have to say, I thought this was a better paced movie than Dead Reckoning, and Dead Reckoning is almost 3 hours also. And I thought this was a better paced film in the long run. My negatives. One of my negatives is exactly like the last movie, Dead Reckoning. The villain, Gabriel, is a very weak villain. I don't know if it's just the actor, because a lot of people don't know, they had an actor originally for Dead Reckoning, but then, the COVID happened, and they had to shut down production, and the original actor they had to back out because he was scheduled for another movie, so they brought in this guy last minute, and like I said, it's like with any movie, any comic book movie, any James Bond movie, the hero is only as good as the villain. If you don't have a great villain, a lot of times the movie doesn't work. We've seen that in a lot of James Bond movies where the movie was good, but the villain was horrible and it brought the movie down. Like the last James Bond movie, No Time to Die, or Quantum of Solace. But then you get the great villains like in Casino Royale, the Chief, or in Skyfall, Javier Bardem, and you go, yes. Or comic book movies. You get the Green Goblin, or you get Heath Ledger's Joker in the Batman, the Dark Knight, you know what I mean. Great villain works with the hero, Here, you don't get that. Not a good villain. And considering we had to have this villain now, 2 movies, the last 2 movies, well, maybe the last 2 movies, it's like, wow. The villain they had in Rogue Nation and Fallout was a great villain. That's where you should have had that villain be the last villain in these last 2 movies. He was a great villain. Or, like everyone says, the best villain in these Mission Impossible movies was in Mission Impossible 3. The one right behind me. The late Philip Seymour Hoffman. He was great. Too bad, if Philip Seymour Hoffman was alive now, I would have said, bring him back for these final 2 movies. Because he was the best. This movie has a lot of flashbacks. Flashbacks to Mission Impossible 1. Flashbacks to Mission Impossible 3. Flashbacks to even the Dead Reckoning movie that we just got 2 years ago. Why? Now, for one of them, I understand if they go back and talk about the rabbit's foot that was in Mission Impossible 3. You know, that MacGuffin that we never found out what is it? What is it used for? Why did Philip Seymour Hoffman want it? Well, in this movie, we find that out. So that was one flashback. I was like, okay. And I don't mean flashback as like new material. I mean like old footage from the movie, put into this movie, and use it as a flashback. Now that was the only time I was like, okay, now I see that one. But why are we going back to Mission Impossible 1, Mission Impossible 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever? And I'm like, it's not needed. You're adding to the runtime, and this is almost a 3-hour movie. And you've never done this in any other Mission Impossible movie. So I don't know, once again, when they were working on this film, you had the writer's strike. And I don't know if that was a cause of, we need something to, we can't write anymore because of the writer's strike. So why don't we just use old footage from previous movies to pat in that runtime, to pat in the script, without actually having to write dialogue in the script, because we can't write because of the writer's strike. So we just use old footage from previous movies to explain. The thing this movie does is as people like to call it now, the Rise of Skywalker effect. You know how in the Rise of Skywalker, that character, that character is related to that old original character. Oh, that character is related to that old original character. Because everybody has to be connected. Everyone has to have some familiar, family-oriented background. They are all connected. Well, for some reason, the Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning does that again. I'm not going to spoil who the character is related to, but Shane Winningham, who was in Dead Reckoning, we find out who he's related to, and I'm going to admit it, there was no reason for it. There was absolutely no reason for us to know that character. We thought he was just working for the FBI trying to track down Ethan Hunt. No, he actually has a motive because he's related to someone from Ethan Hunt's past. Of course he is. Why can't he just be an original character with his own motives? The end. Speaking of Vanessa Kirby, I don't get why she wasn't in this movie. We saw her in Fallout, we saw her in Dead Reckoning, and last time I checked, at the end of Dead Reckoning, she was still alive. So I don't know why they just decided not to have Vanessa Kirby in this film. I know she was shooting Fantastic Four, but I thought, man, where's Vanessa Kirby? I mean, bad enough she killed off Rebecca Ferguson, Issa Faust, in the last movie. I mean, where are the women at? I mean, okay, you got Haley Atwell. Not enough woman for anybody. When Dead Reckoning came out, it was Dead Reckoning Part 1. Dead Reckoning Part 1. And then this movie was supposed to be Dead Reckoning Part 2. Pretty much a direct follow-up, continuation, no gap in the timeline, no jump ahead, continue right where it left off pretty much. At least the very next day. And then they changed the title, not the turtle, the title, to The Final Reckoning. And when we start this movie, like I've already said, Haley Atwell's character, feels like we missed her arc. From the ending of the last movie to the beginning of this movie. What happened to her? Ving Rhames, Luther, where we see him at the end of the last movie, and where we see him at the beginning of this movie, there's literally an entire story missing between his character. And I'm just like, Was there a movie in between that we're just missing? I mean, no, I just didn't understand that. It's like, I feel like we're missing information. We're missing literally storylines between one movie and the next movie. I mean, overall, did I enjoy the movie? Yes. Was I entertained? Was it a darker Mission Impossible movie than previous ones? Yes. It deals with nuclear war. Truly, nuclear war. Which is almost funny in a way, well, not that nuclear war is funny, that if Dead Reckoning Part 1 came out in 2022, and then this movie came out in 2023, then you would have truly had the true Barbenheimer, the Missenheimer. You could have had Missenheimer, Mission Impossible Oppenheimer, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning dealing with nuclear war, and then you go see Oppenheimer. Or you can watch Oppenheimer of how he built the bomb, and then go see the Final Reckoning for how seeing the bombs going off. Nuclear, baby. The Missenheimer. That's a new thing. Missenheimer. I enjoy it, yes. Was it entertaining? Was it still somewhat of a disappointment if this is the final movie for Tom Cruise? Yes. I've always said there are certain franchises that when you know when they should have ended. Fast and Furious 7, when Paul Walker passed away. That should have been the end of Fast and Furious. The last 3 Fast and Furious movies are some of the worst ones we've gotten. I could even argue that now with Mission Impossible, after Mission Impossible Fallout, the one with Henry Cavill, and they brought back Michelle Monaghan, that was a great movie, the best action in the franchise, a great story arc for Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise. They made it personal, a great villain that was carried over from Rogue Nation, and it ended on a perfect note. But then they went on to do Dead Reckoning and now the Final Reckoning. And I don't think these last 2 Mission Impossible movies are even close to Fallout. But like I say, was it entertaining? Yes. Do I want to see more? Yes. Do I hope maybe we'll see Tom Cruise again? Hey, I say that because people forget. Back in 2011, when Ghost Protocol came out, that was supposed to be the last Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie, and that Jeremy Renner was supposed to take over the role, or take over the franchise, and, push forward. But because the movie got a great reviews, and it made a lot of money, they said, time out, we're going to continue with Tom Cruise. Sorry, Jeremy Renner. Poor Jeremy Renner. No Bourne Legacy, no Mission Impossible, Hawkeye Season 2, we don't know. It's a sad day to be Jeremy Renner. But they're like, no, we're going to continue with Tom Cruise. Because that was supposed to be the send-off. And even the way this movie ended is very similar to how that one ended. And I say to myself, don't think Tom Cruise is going to be leaving this franchise. I'll believe it when I see it. And if the movie makes a lot of money this weekend, I'm telling you right now, his mission is not over yet. Now let me know in the comments below. I would at least give this a 4 out of 5. It's still very entertaining. Like I said, not up there with the other Mission Impossible movies. But hey, it was still an entertaining movie. Still, that submarine scene was great. The plane sequence, great. But let me know in the comments below. Were you a fan of the Final Reckoning? Did you think this is the final reckoning for Tom Cruise? I don't. So let me know. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. Did you choose to accept the mission?